First time you've seen one of these?
Yeah, just making sure it works.
Microphone. It works. So, co-founder of the Nuit Initiative. Let's kick things off by delving into what that is exactly. What is it that you're involved in?
The Nuit Initiative is a network of untapped entrepreneurs. And ultimately, when you see the environment in which we grew up, we're entrepreneurs by nature. We're like natural-born hustlers, you know? And we realize that that's not only a talent, but it's also a gift. The unfortunate part about that is that there's not enough avenues that allow us to perfect that gift and expand that talent. Because most of the times, it's all halted and stalled by lack of funds or, lack of investment. And when you look at something as simple as, let's say, the hip-hop community, this is a community that literally inspired the world. This community is a community that influences every young millennial that's in front of a computer, that's wanting to be a star or a model or whatever the case may be. This community is the community that generates billions of dollars for fashion lines, consumer electronic products. You name it. But there's never been a fund put together to really maximize what that potential is. And sometimes it baffles me because ultimately I think it's because of the environment in which the stereotypes has actually been put forth and how certain races and certain genders and certain equalities have been put aside to be, it's really, I never really understood exactly what caused it, but the opportunity of this is really missed because of the fact that there's not enough opportunities going in that direction.
It's not democratized.
Democratized. Very, very
important.
The
fundraising environment.
Absolutely. So this is one of the main reasons why we wanted to create this Nuit Initiative, because it ultimately put light on all that talent that actually moves forward. Because personally, I knew nothing about finances before I got into the music industry. The music industry opened up doors for me that actually educated me into things I never knew I would ever be jumping into, like energy, for instance. Who would have thought that I would be selling energy? I didn't know anything about energy before 2013. But it puts me in a very, interesting environment. It surrounds me around people that's knowledgeable. And it also creates opportunities around me that gives me those resources that I never had before to really fulfill those ideas, push forward on investments that I thought that I never could even raise money for. But because I'm surrounded by a key group of people, it allows me to be able to accomplish more than my peers. I was always the kind of artist that thought as an entrepreneur first. To me, music was the avenue to get to the business. Because before music, I was a natural-born hustler. Right? Yeah. So ultimately, now I realized music created an avenue that can allow me to hustle harder. Mm-hmm. And I had a different mind state of what hustling was back then, because to me, it was just about making money. It didn't matter whether I made it the good way or the bad way. As long as I came home with a profit, I was good. But then, of course, as you start to get deeper into society and you start getting out of the environment that you're used to being surrounded by, and then you don't have to no longer watch your back, and you don't have to overthink or outthink your component and things of this nature, you're realizing, wow, these are tools that actually helps me have an advantage over corporate America, because I'm thinking business from a different standpoint. And if you notice, even in the entertainment business, the most successful ones are the ones that came out the hood. Mm-hmm. Let's look at Jay-Z, for instance. Look how much he's accomplished in the little time he's been in corporate America with those relationships. Like, he's worth $500 million now. You follow?
Yeah, but how do you get out? How did you make that transition into the world where you could be a successful entrepreneur with music? And what do you look for as you back entrepreneurs and who are kind of looking to do something similar as you did?
Well, ultimately, our goal is to create the avenues for the untapped that we didn't have. And we know exactly what the ideas are, what the thoughts are, what they're thinking, what their goals are, because we were once them ourselves. And we know that with the right surrounding, with the right funding, and the right planning, with the right team, that we can literally change the face of the young generation, the way they think, and also the minority communities. We can create a different idea of what success can mean to them, because half the time they only result to things that they feel will allow them to survive, because no one does what they do for the fun of it. And ultimately, when you don't have a choice, that just becomes what it is. So it's wasted talent that just goes down the drain because there was nothing there to support it, in so many words. And the Nuit Initiative will be that opportunity to give, that multi-billion-dollar idea and allow it now to go back into those communities and allow a better lifestyle for them. Because ultimately, even now, you got to think about it. As much as we accomplish and as much as we donate to the society, it never trickles back down. You'll make billions for corporations, but then the corporations don't reward you back in the amount of value that you're bringing to them. And ultimately, it's because of the lack of education and also the support system that's not necessarily there for them to be able to benefit financially with it.
Now, Robert, what are some of the contours of this program in terms of fundraising? Would you have a target amount of entrepreneurs that you're looking to support? Explain the program to us.
Yes.
And before you explain, let me give you Robert Smith. Prime example of what the network of untapped entrepreneurs can bring. Now, just looking at him without this suit, you would never think that he was this knowledgeable in finances. I mean, he is brilliant. No, when I tell you brilliant, hundreds of my millions came from ideas and proposals that he put together. And this is just one. Okay, tell him.
You gotta drop the mic after that, right? So
I was trying to catch it before it fell, sorry.
So, but before I get into that, one of the main things that I'd like to point out to such an august, panel of folks that have been up here that have spoke and those that are in the crowd, what Akon represents to us is more than just a celebrity who's had, worldly success and notoriety and so forth. What he's been able to do in navigating all across a war-torn continent in Africa is truly monumental. And rather than just, some folks would say, philanthropic, we like to look at it as more prophetic. He's navigated across 18 countries and has provided electricity to now approaching nearly 100 million people. So when we talk about and I'm one of the firm believers in, it was a line by Kanye West. He said, if you admire someone, you should go ahead and tell them. People never get the flowers while they can still smell them. And so I just wanted to make sure that we understand what this man has been able to accomplish.
That's a hip-hop quotable.
Yeah. And so the purpose of the Nuit Initiative is that, myself, Akon, our other business partner, Derek Watkins, who's here, as well as John Kars, we've been asked to come and speak on different panels all over the country as well as, internationally about this whole term of impact investing. But the real goal is to take it away from a sexy narrative and just optics and surface level rhetoric and language, but really be intentional with what we want to do. And so when we talk about impact, it's closing the wealth gap, first and foremost. For African Americans, it's 228 years. So that's a real number, right? For Latin Americans, it's 84 years. And so as Americans and people who really want to be or continue to be sort of the envy of the world, it's about our diversity, right? And what we represent in our collective energy and thought. But the problem has been there currently is no entrepreneurial ecosystem with the right amount of capital around it. And that's not just financial capital, because everyone talks about, oh, invest, invest, invest. But if you don't have the right intellectual capital, the human capital, the social capital, and what Akon and other celebrities and athletes and entertainers represent, which is influential capital, then to be honest, it's just sexy language about impact and folks using the same terminologies. So myself and Derek Watkins, our other business partner, we had lunch with Steve Case about a week and a half ago. We were talking about all these different strategies of how we can really create the right amount of impact that will actually ultimately close this wealth gap. And so we're really excited about it. We're very intentional. We do believe that, you can also generate great returns and create, powerful yields, but also do a social good at the same time. And so the whole goal of this Nuit Initiative, which we'll be officially announcing the first quarter of 2019, is to wrap that capital ecosystem around, rather than most folks saying racial minorities, we like to look at people and categorize them as asset classes. So if you look at African Americans, we're very diverse. There's different asset classes of African Americans based on how they were raised, what schools they went to. One that went to an HBCU has a different frame of reference from a college experience than one who went to an Ivy League school. Or when you look at another asset class of people are those that are, have been incarcerated and are coming now into society. But they actually have very valuable skill sets and ways of thinking that most wouldn't understand. Then when you talk about women, or you talk about the LGBT community and so forth. So rather than saying racial minorities, it's more so there's this network of untapped entrepreneurs and asset classes of people who see the world differently. And through that difference of knowledge and perspective, you get a lot of ingenuity and intelligence, that typically is not taught inside of the walls of, this Ivy League school or what have you. And so we're really excited about it. And the purpose is to, really connect with folks like the Ray Dalios of the world, the Paul Tudor Joneses of the world, and other folks as yourself who have been involved in shaping the whole world of high-structured finance. But typically this doesn't happen. We don't engage in a very intimate and real way.
Now you see why I picked them up, right?
Now, obviously they're untapped. That's why you put that in the title. How will you find people to join this community? How are you sourcing deals? What are you looking for? What are your plans to kind of bring these people together, and so that they can enjoy the benefits of the people that you bring in to help explain entrepreneurialism, building your own business, and so forth?
Well, the good thing is the entrepreneurialism is already existing. Like, it's already there. Our job is to connect them with that. We've already identified multiple opportunities. So now it's a matter of putting it, packaging it, and bringing it to people that's interested in that field and understanding what that future looks like for them financially, and then figure it out.
Well, and to add to that, so over the past several years, Akon has been investing his own capital as an angel investor quietly and so forth. And then myself and Derek, having been in the VC space, we've invested in nearly 100 investments at the intersection of technology, entertainment, and trends. And a large of it is in like digital media. And so this whole issue that people say, well, where are these entrepreneurs? They're all over. The problem is that most folks only think about Silicon Valley, Silicon Beach, and Silicon Alley. But there's multiple cities all over the country where you've got these economic deserts of brilliant entrepreneurs, brilliant. But there's not, a real capital ecosystem in those local communities that can connect them all together. One example is in Cincinnati. So in Cincinnati, a very dear friend of ours who's a part of the Nuit Initiative, gentleman by the name of Darren Reedus, he runs what's called the Cincinnati Minority Business Accelerator. It's a consortium of African-American and Latino-owned businesses, about 38 or so, that are doing just over $1.5 billion of revenue. They've created over 4,000 jobs, and they are accelerated and supported by the major Fortune 500 companies that are headquartered in Cincinnati.
Tell them how much they invested, though.
Well, they only have in operating capital a little over $1.5 million.
Can you
That's
imagine that?
Right. The organization's OPEX is literally $1.5 million, but they've created almost 4,000 jobs, and the actual revenue that's generated is $1.5 billion across those 38 companies. So we look at that and say, well, we need to help expand and take that wash and repeatable model that's in Cincinnati and duplicate it across multiple cities that have a high concentration of untapped entrepreneurial talent. And so doing that under the initiative is great and it's wonderful, but if you don't wrap an actual investment fund around that, then you're missing it. And so the real opportunity is it's just over $300 billion annually that's being missed right now. and over 1 million jobs. And so we look at that and say, well, we should wrap a hedge fund strategy, with quantitative analysis points where we can actually extract that value and actually benefit and create wealth from it. So the opportunities are already there. The entrepreneurs are there. It's just a matter of bringing them together, and that's our goal.
Now, Akon, you've done a lot of work in Africa as well, and I've read articles about Akon and the desire to, create pockets of Africa that operate on Akon. Mm-hmm. Can you expand upon that idea? I know there are a lot of people here who are interested in digital currencies, and would love to hear some thoughts that you have on that front.
Absolutely. Akon actually was created and thought more so to combat the corruption in Africa. That was the beginning of why I wanted to do the Akon token. Ultimately, because of the blockchain technology, it opens up so many opportunities to eradicate, you can say, corruption. And Africa's system, the reason why it hasn't grown and the reason why it's in such a stale situation is because there's a lot of corruption within the government, within companies, and it's just horrible. Corruption allows no country to grow. So that was the original. But then I realized that because of the young generation there and how savvy they are digitally, I said this could be a bigger opportunity, not only to eradicate, the corruption, but this could be the future for Africa and how they even think about currency all in itself. Because when you think about all the resources that's in Africa, Africa has never benefited from any of those resources because of corruption. And when you look at all those minerals and everything that Africa has to offer, for Africa to be in the position that it's in, and it's holding over 80% of the world's resources, is just mind-blowing. So my idea was, okay, this young generation understands this digital format. They understand how Africa wants to grow. They understand that, okay, there is not too many platforms and opportunities for them, but throughout this Akon process, they can now create that, because what happens is now the digital cell phone becomes what connects all the youth today, right? They pay all their cell phone bills from it, and then they ultimately even pay now their basic light bills and all the little, utility processes and everything now. So with this Akon, what that allows them to do, it allows them to be able to not only connect with each other, but it also gives them the opportunity now utilize that currency and pretty much substitute it for the unstable currency that exists today.
And where are you in those plans? What stage of the process are you in?
We're about 80% before going live.
Okay. So do you have a timeline?
We have a
targeted timeline?
Targeted timeline, first quarter.
First quarter 2019.
First quarter of 2019. We got a couple dApps that we're looking into adding before we actually launch. And on the Akon platform, there's a lot of apps and dApps, and all of them are all signifying different things. We have some that actually is more educational dApps that these young kids can adapt. We have medical dApps that that can utilize for research purposes and things of that nature. We have financial dApps on it to where they can make transactions back and forth digitally. And I mean, the system is just think of the app store, but for society on this dApp. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's amazing. It's so amazing I can't even explain it. I actually have to allow you to just use your wildest imagination and know that it exists.
Well, and I'll even add just a bit of perspective to that. So if we look at Verizon, for example, and AT&T and T-Mobile, the three largest telcos, if you will, in Africa, he's already impacting 100 million people and counting and continuing to grow. And so one of the things that we're doing with the Akon is making it the unifying currency, if you will, to launch the first impact-focused telco. And what we mean by that is we have a phone service, there's internet as well, and then there's cable, but more so digital, which is content. And if you drop a mobile device in any form of a telco to 100 million current customers, when you talk about the economic value that's there, it's instantaneous, because now you're not hoping to get the customer. You already have them. And you become the first telco that actually has a quadruple play, because there's no telco right now on earth that actually provides this, electricity. And so when you think about that, now we're in a position where it could become potentially more valuable on the continent of Africa than a Verizon or AT&T is, in the United States. And so now all of those apps, which he's referencing as those dApps, development apps, are all tied to the Akon, and that being the one currency that they would all use on the device. So,
yep. Starting with paying their basic energy bills.
Right. Now, there have been some headlines recently about you. 2020?
Where'd you read that at?
The internet.
uh-oh.
Where everything is truthful and kind and wonderful. You gonna run?
I'm highly considering it.
Yeah.
I am. I'm actually highly considering it for many reasons. One of the biggest reasons was to promote myself. It's the best platform in the world, right? Outside of that, of course. No, I'm just joking. But I have been really contemplating on it. And it was more so to disrupt the vote. Because I feel, in many ways, America isn't really the country that I fought to be in. My family, my mom and my dad, they're from Senegal, West Africa, born and raised. And my father always had this dream that I want all my kids to be raised in America. And I want them to have this American, education. And I want them to really enjoy freedom. So when we were all, when my mom was pregnant, he always flew my mom to the States, St. Louis. And we were all born in St. Louis because my dad didn't want us to have any immigration problems, and he wanted us all to have U.S. citizenship for that freedom. So when I was about 7 or 8, he flew us all back to the U.S. so we can go to school. Now, when I came here, I spoke about 5 different languages, all languages except English. So I was this African kid with nappy hair, extremely black, couldn't get no girls, constantly being made fun of because I had this heavy, heavy accent trying to learn how to speak English. So I kind of alienated as many languages as I could to just focus on English because I wanted to learn how to speak English with no accent whatsoever. And that's why I can speak English as well with no accent. But for the cost of that, I kind of lost my French because I couldn't speak French with anyone here. Because in America, no one speaks nothing but English, really. It's not like, and now Spanish is starting to kind of creep into the communities because we have a lot of, Spanish people around us. But ultimately, I started to realize the difference in the culture. In Africa, there's this real family-orientated culture. Like, family comes first no matter what. Over anything is family first. But when I came to the U.S., I was kind of baffled because I met a lot of friends that didn't have their dad in their life or being raised by just their fathers, and their mothers were either on crack or wasn't around. So there was a lot of single parenting. And I couldn't really relate to that with my friends because I'd be like, dude, where is your dad? And they would get so upset when I asked that. And I was like, why are you getting mad at me? I just want to know where your dad is. But then you start to realize that was like the norm in that environment. And it's kind of showed the behaviors of a lot of my friends because they would make decisions that I wouldn't dare make because I know my dad will kick my ass. And then others would make it because they know they wouldn't really get in trouble if they did it. So I found myself around this real challenging environment as far as to how my friends reacted towards family, because family wasn't really first in America the way I came from, in Africa. So ultimately, not only did I notice that, but then I started to notice there was a lot of division at the time when I came to America as well, too, because everyone, even when we went to go to lunch, all the black kids would sit in the far corner, the white kids would sit in the far left. Then you have the Chinese on one side, the Indians in the other. So everyone was so segregated, And I was like, man, this is so weird. It was the most uncomfortable migration for me that I ever had outside of being made fun of all the time. So then I started to think about that as I'm living today, how comfortable that was. And I have kids of my own. Now, my kids, they don't even know what racism is. What's even crazier, and people think that I'm crazy for that, but my kids don't even know what a slave is. I don't teach them history. I definitely don't teach them black history. Now, I know it sounds crazy that I don't teach my kids black history and I'm African, but black history is just so dark. And I never want to have my kids in a position where they look at another race as if it's supposed to be different or as it's supposed to be upper or higher or lower than them. So the reason why I don't teach them black history is because black history has a certain stigma that comes with a certain memory chip that goes in your brain to make you believe or feel like black people or white people are supposed to be different. And when my kids have friends that come over to the house who are white, they don't look at them as white kids. They just look at them like, that's Bob or that's Kelly. They don't know the difference between what that race line and gender is, because to them, they're just a person that they have fun with until someone else may come and say, don't hang around with that kid, he's black, or don't do this because they don't do that like we do it. So kids, I never really gave them that option to make that choice because I never made it existing to them. You know, so ultimately, when I look at the world and where it is today, and I saw so much progress from the time I came to America to now, how much progress was unraveled within these last 3 or 2.5 years. It's sad to me, you know, and I just wanted that dream to be different, you know. Ultimately, we're all going to be, we're all people. We're all going to be in this together at the end of the day. Even when you look at climate change and how it's affecting this world and how many hurricanes we've seen, just within this last year, how many natural disasters, all these fires in LA. Your race is not going to save you from that. At the end of the day, if my neighbor's in trouble, guess who's going to run out and help them? I will, and I'm hoping that person will do it for me and not just because I'm who I am or because of the race or the color of my skin. If I'm genuinely in trouble, I want to be able to know that I can count on you as a friend, as a person, as a human, because we have to have that mentality today, because at the end of the day, we're only going backwards. We're not moving forward, and there's no real advantage, honestly, to it outside of the fact that you just feel like you're more superior than the next person when we all know in our heart we all bleed the same red blood. You know, so it's a bigger and a more sentimental reason for me, and it's more so to just get that floor to open the minds of people to where we can have a more equality way of thinking rather than a way of thinking in a way to where we feel like that fear is what's dominant, or you know, a certain lifestyle or power should be what we work towards. And the next person's feelings or the next person's morals or beliefs don't matter. Like, I just want us to really think of this world as a way as this is something we have to share. And this is something that openly, because my granddad already told me, I never forgot this. He said, look, grandson, this world is like a hotel room. We're just passing through. And what he meant by that is that I don't know how religious anyone in this room is, but sometimes we tend to lose our spirituality. We actually forget that when we die, there's a judgment. There's a day where we have to answer for everything that we do. Everything or anything you do in the dark eventually will come out in the light. So what are we living for right now on this earth? What is the purpose of this earth? It's not just to make money and live lavish. There's another purpose. I always felt like a lot of that is a distraction to the real purpose and goal, because spiritually, this is what keeps me humble and this is what keeps me moving. And I get so involved in so many things that helps others to uplift themselves, or philanthropy. I always try to do as much as I can. I want more extra credit than I can fit in my pocket. So God can't question what I tried to do. Because I know what I did, and I'm trying to fix that and do more. You know? So it's ultimately the reason, you know? Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, we will resume our regularly scheduled program of volatility and market sell-offs and shocks and turbulence. No, thank you, Akon and Robert Smith, so much for a really interesting, insightful, and uplifting conversation. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because we are neighbors. We're both born in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Robert. Did he you go back ever?
Huh?
Did you go back ever?
Oh, yeah.
all
I'm
the
there
time?
all the time.
Oh, I was taking the microphone with me.
All right, if we could be so kind to clear the room so our wait staff can clear the table for the next 20 minutes, and our next panel starts at 40 after the hour. And again, the Arch Street Pavilion is open in case you want to check it out.